The first thing I'd like to talk about is judgments. Specifically, judgments that we put on ourselves and judgments that we put on other people, and how, from a certain standpoint, those are really kind of arbitrary. From a certain viewpoint, how you can see those judgments just dissolve. And really, this comes from a lot of my practice of being in nature and trusting the things, the messages that being in that system shares with you, that are different than the messages that being within the sort of human social system share with you. Specifically, I remember there was a time in my life when I felt like I didn't really belong here. I felt like I didn't have a place, I didn't have a reason to be here, like maybe I didn't deserve to be here, I wasn't worth being here, any of those things. And at that time, I remember one specific event that I was in the woods doing my meditation. And at this point, I was kind of feeling that way. I was kind of questioning, saying a lot of why am I here kind of thing. And there was a tree that I was standing in front of. And as I was just standing and looking at this tree, it came to my mind that I didn't have any question about the tree's existence. That in my mind, the tree was exactly where it was supposed to be, that there was no possible wrongness to it being just right there, just in its form that it had. And as I had noticed that, it made me very aware of the discongruence between that and my thoughts about myself. I, in that moment, saw myself as a part of everything, just like that tree is a part of nature, just like that tree was a part of nature and a part of the world. And that, just like that tree was exactly where it was supposed to be, well, maybe I was too. Maybe all those questions I had were just something crazy that I picked up along the way that didn't really exist. It didn't have to exist, I might say. And so there's been later things that I've thought of too in relation to this. One specifically, if you feel right now how you're supported by the ground underneath you. Feel that for a second. Feel how your body's weight is resting completely on top of the earth. The earth is just holding you, carrying you. And to me, that's a message. It's a message that your existence is worthy of support. And as you feel that, you can notice the air that you're breathing. And how that air, in a certain way, that thing that's most essential for your life, that's a message too. That air gives itself to you without any condition, without any judgment, just as a gift from the planet, in support of your being here, in support of your life, which says that your life is worthy of support, that it has value. And that means something. Literally everything that we need for our life is supported by this planet. Food, water, a place to stand, air to breathe, it's all just right there. And we've complicated that somewhat with our social structures, but it's still the case. And it's kind of this little message. We get to be supported, we get to be held here. It makes me feel very loved to think about that. Then I go over to the other side, the side that there are judgments, especially within the social structures and everything like that. And some of those judgments have a purpose, some of them maybe are just total craziness that got thrown in at some point. But if you look underneath all that to the basis of existence, those judgments aren't foundational. So you can always rest on the knowledge that this planet has a place for you. That this planet supports your life and is completely confirming your being here moment to moment to moment. And it's not conceptual, it's something you can actually feel. You can feel that ground underneath you, you can feel the air moving into your lungs. So those judgments kind of confuse me a little bit. You know, I could probably come up with some reasons why I think they're there, where those judgments come from, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the matter. What you think creates those, or how they function, you know, to give value to some people and take value from others. You know, personally, I don't totally buy into that. So, my friends, I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I will talk to you next time I talk to you.
Hello, it's JFrank. I want to talk about judgments. My understanding of judgments and the human capability and need for the ability to discern and judge, particularly between people, but in any kind of situation. We develop the ability to discern and judge because the ability to make quick decisions and judgments, whether or not something is dangerous, I think we developed an exaggerated sense of danger around things that are uncertain or ambiguous, because in those situations where something is uncertain, the safest thing to do is to attack or to run away. It's not an ambivalent kind of situation. When something is ambiguous, it could be harmless or it could be deadly, and it is in your best interest to take a positive action, such as fighting it or running away from it. And so I think this this behavior is still very much present. I think that's what we see when you're walking down the street and someone looks at you funny because, you're not passing, if you're trans, or if you look like me, like I sometimes look. And there's that ambiguity going on because they're not sure if you're dangerous or if you're harmless. And so I think there's something that triggers in their brain that says, you need to make a decision about this, you need to take some kind of action, run away, attack, do something. And so I think the influences of society has been, there's all these frameworks, and there's people around you every day, and most people aren't dangerous, and it's okay, and even if you get attacked, there's all these safety networks in place. So I think that's what allows people to feel a level of safety even in an ambiguous situation. But I think that fear and that need to make a decision is still there. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is that being involved in society with other people at this point in human evolution means that you have to deal with judgment. And that sucks because there's a lot of really harsh and negative judgment in the world. And an unfair amount of it is directed towards people in, under our umbrella, the queer, trans, gay, lesbian, bisexual, ally, the umbrella, the big umbrella that we fall under. And I think in some ways there's nothing we can do about that. But I really like what Dan said about not feeling that way when you are surrounded by nature. Because you're one amongst... the sense that I got from that was that you felt like you were... Like, obviously you're not a tree, but you related to the tree because your relationship to the earth is the same as the tree. There's like a symbiotic cycle going on. And I think what you were describing was a reconnection with that cycle that you can't really feel as much when you're in the middle of a big city, like a lot of us spend our time walking around in a big city. And I definitely feel disconnected from that sense. I do try and spend a lot of time outdoors, but it's not the same as what you're talking about, going out in the woods and meditating. So I wish it were easier to do that, and I wish that we're more valued in society. People spending time alone. I think people would feel... I don't think people would judge themselves as much. I think it's really difficult because to change society, we really have to speak to people on a personal level. And the thing is, you can't police judgment, because as soon as you tell someone that they're judging someone else, you're judging them, and it's just a chain. Not cool, you know? So I guess the question that I would add to this discussion is, what can we do to change society when what we want to change is essentially part of who we are as humans? How do we change that? Would humans resemble humans if they didn't feel the need to impose their opinions and their feelings on other people? I think we are in a position as queer people, because of the difficulties that each and every one of us goes through, to show people how to be more empathetic and how to be less judgmental. What can you do? That's what I'm curious to find out. That's what I want to know, and I would love to discuss it further. Alright, I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Howdy, it's Wesley, and we're talking about judgments and essential value. So I want to go back to some of the stuff that Dan was talking about at the beginning of this conversation. How he mentioned that there's judgments that we place on ourselves, and then there's judgments that we place on other people. And from a certain viewpoint, you can see those judgments dissolve. And he has experienced this in nature, right? And there was that moment when you're standing in front of a tree and you realize that there are no questions in your mind about this tree's existence and if it's in the right place, if its form is proper. There's absolutely no question of any wrongness with the tree or with the whole natural system you're in. I've never thought about it that way, and it's so true for me. Like, I've never criticized or judged the way that a tree's branches have grown. I've only admired, or I've only observed, or just let it be and not pay much attention to it, but I've never judged where its roots are, the way that it grew, its physical characteristics. That's just always been known to me, that that's exactly how it's supposed to be. There can't be anything wrong with it. That's natural. And it's amazing when you think of that and then you recognize the discongruence between that and the way we view ourselves. and other people in society. I think that JFrank is right that the judgment element is part of what makes us human, and we have evolved to make judgments for survival purposes and to not get ourselves in danger. I think the best thing we can do is recognize these two systems that seem kind of polar opposite at times and figure out a way to balance them out a little bit. And I think there are ways of doing that even within the social system. For example, one of the downfalls that I've fell into as a trans person who has, had the need to medically transition, physically transition, is that sometimes I fall into this trap of just being hypercritical and judgmental of my physical appearance because I'm actively pursuing efforts to change it, and so sometimes I just become too judgmental. So anyway, I think that sometimes I get this idea in my head of what a man's body is supposed to look like, and I desire it to such a degree that I become very judgmental of myself not embodying that. And a couple weeks ago I went to a different city and I was visiting some friends there, and so I was around a bunch of new people. Lots of them were males, cisgendered males. They all had different body types and different ways that their clothes fit on them, and they were all attractive. My friends kept, just making all these comments about how attractive they all are. I don't know if any of them had this idealized body that I've had in my head of what I've been trying to obtain, and being around that helped me just kind of recognize that each person has their own individual body, and it differs from person to person. There's not one beauty, there's not one way of being physically, and no body type made one of them more of a man than the next. And it really brought me the same kind of realization that I am perfect just the way I am. That's kind of hard for me to say. I don't always feel that way. I definitely still have my days of dysphoria and whatnot, but what I'm trying to get at is that maybe it takes stepping outside of your daily habits and daily routines, whether that's being out in nature or being surrounded by new people, that hopefully can kind of let a person put things in a new perspective and feel some truth in the beauties of the differences and the perfections in the differences, and that we have each grown our form, and that's exactly how we're supposed to be, just as we don't question the way a tree's branches lay. Why are we so judgmental of the human form of that? And I know for me anyway, the more that I work on myself, sort things out for myself, I guess the more empathetic I can be towards others. And so maybe that's where it has to start. It has to start with ourselves, and then maybe once we become less judgmental of ourselves, we can become less judgmental of others, because I do notice myself being judgmental towards others about things that I'm also judgmental to myself about. I really do think there's something to that. If we can be less judgmental of ourselves, we can be less judgmental of other people. Alright.
Did we say our names?
In case you have not met us, this is Danny and I am Michelle.
So the topic is judgments. I have a lot of ideas, but do you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
I guess I have a lot of views on judgment too, but what stuck out to me when I thought of this subject, I think about with myself how I judge myself a little bit because I fear other people judging me. And sometimes people really aren't judging me, and sometimes people are probably really nice, non-judgmental people, but I still keep from interacting with people because I'm scared that they're going to judge me. That keeps me sometimes from making friends, and sometimes I feel like from having really good experiences and interactions with other people. And it's not necessarily that I am ashamed of who I am or I don't like who I am or I care what other people think about me, but in reality I do care about what other people think about me, and I don't think necessarily that it's because I'm insecure of who I am or anything. It's more because people do judge, and like for instance, look at my armpits, and some people think that's really disgusting, and sometimes I go outside and I'm wearing a tank top, or I go to the beach and I'm wearing a bikini, and I want to just be all out and be like, this is me and I don't care what you think, but the only reason I care what they think is because I thrive off of positive interactions with people, and sometimes that keeps me from having positive interactions with people, and sometimes people will avoid coming up to me, and maybe they would if I looked different. And so that's kind of like a problem that I've been having with myself that I want to work on. I don't even necessarily know what to do, but I guess if those people aren't going to approach me because of the way I look, then they're not someone I want to be interacting with anyways, but deep down I do care. And so, I don't know, that's something that I want to work on. Maybe if anybody has any advice on being themselves. I know I've gotten better at it than before. Like, I'm more comfortable with who I am, but at the same time it still is kind of difficult for me to be exactly who I am because I'm scared I'm being judged. I do have like really positive interactions with people, like especially at work. Like, I have really awesome interactions with people. I love working in customer service, but at the same time a lot of me is covered up, and like they can see like a few tattoos, but I'm wearing like a shirt to here. They can't see my armpits, like they can't see my hairy legs, and so it's a little bit easier in that sense, but at the same time it's just kind of hard showing all of myself and being exactly who I am, because sometimes I'm kind of weird. But then you never meet anybody like you. You don't put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So, those are my thoughts. Somehow you met Danny, and Danny likes me exactly how I am.
That's true. Okay, so as far as judgments go, I have like a couple of different ideas. I really, really, really liked Dan's video about essentially like the world supporting you and validating your existence. But my like experience with judgments is much more like human psychologically based. And in JFrank's video, he was talking about like what we can do as far as judgments are concerned. What I want to talk about are like just things you can do to make yourself less judgmental, or things that I do to make myself less judgmental, because I find myself being racist. I find myself being judgmental. I find myself being sexist. Like, those things have been ingrained into us, and it takes work, I think, and acknowledgement to like get out of that. So like one of the things I do involves like in groups. When you meet someone, you generally either attribute them into your like in group, as in like you share some type of social group with them, or the out group, like they're different from you, you like disassociate from them. And there are actual like things that happen in your brain when you do that. You like don't remember facial characteristics as well when someone's in your out group.
I see their difference.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, for instance, if you are like a high-class businessman and you meet a construction worker, you might not associate them with yourself. And so you don't really like see them. Like, you don't see their face and like see who they are and remember them later if they're like outside of those clothes. You just like
Put them in a role.
Yeah, exactly. You put them in a role. So what I do when I meet someone and I find myself doing that is immediately try and find something that I can put them in my in-group with. For instance, if they're like an older, like, I'm going to use businessman again, an older businessman like carrying a briefcase, and we're both at lunch, I'm like, we're both lunch eaters. I bet we both like salad. We're both salad eaters. Like, and then I'm like, we probably enjoy eating the same salads. And I do something to associate myself with that person or find some commonality so that I know that we are the same. And that takes away the judgment because I'm like, oh, they're just like me. And that's essentially what judgment is like figuring out if they're like you or not like you. And it's this weird thing. One of the other things I learned about like judging people and like how I've come to judge people less than I did previously. Essentially meeting people like out of my comfort zone, people who I don't associate with. I picked Michelle and her brother and this other person up hitchhiking, and they taught me a lot about like homeless population and who didn't have anything, and what it meant about them as people, which was, it meant nothing about them as people, but like one of the things that did, stepping outside of my comfort zone, meeting people who were homeless, talking to people on the streets, like, then when I'm walking alone at night on a street, previously I would be like, oh, I'm alone and there's this homeless person, like as if that was like a potential threat. And what I do now is, in my mind, if I'm walking alone and there's a homeless person, I say to myself, oh, thank goodness, like, I'm not alone anymore. It's me and this other person on the street. So it's like this mind frame change. Like, say, like, every time I think about judging other people, all it comes down to is, like, we're the same. Anytime you find yourself not being able to understand somebody or something's situation, you have to realize the similarities that you have. Like, you have to realize the pains that you guys share and the love that you guys share, and like understanding that you're the same causes you to like not be judgmental towards other people. If you want to, you can carry that further. You can carry that into caring about animals. You can find similarities, like when you see, I don't know, a bird hit a window and like people are laughing, and you realize that you feel pain the same way they do, and you see like birds care for their children and you realize that's some bird's child. Like, you start to like have this compassion and understanding beyond just the human connection, but the connection with like all living things. And when you start to do that, your judgments against yourself, I think, start to drop too. When you realize you're part of this bigger picture and part of caring for everything, and everything needs to take care of you, you start to lose judgments on how your makeup looks. Like, it just becomes like insignificant.
Even as far as like bugs go and stuff, like I think bugs can be so creepy. I don't want them in my room. I don't want them, I don't know, anywhere near me really, but I appreciate them, and I used to be, just not even thinking about it, like, oh, a spider's in my room, kill it. Oh, there's ants all over the place, kill them. And it's really hard to relate yourself to a different species, especially as something as tiny as a bug, or even something as simple as a plant. But one thing that we do have in common with things as far as other species and other plants is that we are all doing our best to survive. We're all surviving. We're all living. We're all changing and adapting, and just to be alive. And I think that itself is incredible and insane, and enough to let that thing not only be, but to appreciate it and see it as equal to you.
One of the big things for me about judging myself is I've been like in my past really hard on myself. Like, I've been bulimic. I've been a cutter. I've done a lot of like really harsh things to myself because I judged myself so harshly. And my love for myself, for me, had to come from first learning to like love other people, and like watching other people have so much dysphoria, whether it's like gender dysphoria or other things, and feeling not a part of and not congruent, and hating themselves, and me just looking at them and just like loving them so much and caring for them, it's kind of like my feelings for those people who like couldn't love themselves somehow eventually turned into me understanding that I was in the same situation and saying like, nobody's gonna love me. And I was looking at these people saying the same things to themselves and thinking, God, I love them. And so I thought, well, like, then somebody would love me. I had to learn like self-love, and I had to learn how not to judge myself based on society's views. And I had to surround myself with positive people. And that's a big part of judgment, is like surrounding yourself with people who judge you in the right ways. It takes like action. It takes you like working in your head to like put those positive thoughts there. It takes work to learn not to judge yourself, because we are taught to judge yourself, because judging yourself means that you will buy products so that you will like yourself more. Like, I don't mean to get into, what do you call it, like conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it, but judging yourself and judging other people leads to you wanting outside things to make yourself feel better. And that's what creates a consumer. So everything in our society essentially creates judgment so that we will buy things so we think we can judge ourselves less.
That doesn't ever fix anything or fill any kind of hole. You just want the next biggest thing, the next most expensive thing, the next new thing that's out. If you do figure it out, if you do realize like, oh, I was taught to think this way, you're probably at least, I don't know, 25 or something. Like, people don't actually start thinking about the way they think for a long time, so it's been in your head for a long time.
Before you even get to look at it.
Exactly. And then while you're looking at it, the world is still telling you you're wrong. The world is still telling you that you need to judge yourself. You need these things to be have any kind of self-worth. So of course it takes work, because everywhere you look, things are telling you otherwise. And it's a hard thing, and you need to remind yourself. You need to make post-it notes and post them around your room and consciously be trying to change your way of thinking in order to actually love yourself and the people around you.
So those are our thoughts on judgment. So, are you judging me? I love it. I'm judging you. No, I think it's great. Okay.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
Tongue high five. Foot to butt high five. Group armpit sniff. No judgments.
Let's go out back and plant a family tree.